Good morning, Giselle.
Morning, miss.
How are you?
Fine.
Great. All right, so I'm going to give the others about 2 more minutes before I actually start, okay?
Yes, miss.
All right.
Good morning, miss.
Good morning. I was giving the others a few minutes to join us before I officially start. How are you this morning, Anika?
I'm good, miss.
Okay, great. All right, I'm just going to send them a message to let them know that we already started. But I am recording in the event everyone doesn't get the chance to come online. So just give me a minute. All right, so I am going to begin at 5 minutes after 10. So I just sent the message. Hopefully, everyone join us in the next 2 minutes so I can start. All right, so it's now 5 minutes after. I am going to officially start. So let me just welcome everyone to another engagement with Art Connect. This is our second week, and we are going to be looking at drawing techniques. This is week 2. We're looking at drawing techniques today. The same thing as we would call the shading techniques. You might have heard some of them before. Have you ever heard about drawing techniques? No? All right, so we're going to learn about them today. And I'm going to allow you to watch this video. I'm looking at this young individual, a young black boy, doing using different drawing and shading techniques to create portraits that looks lifelike, realistic. All right, something to inspire us.
Okay.
All right, so that young Nigerian black boy at the time he was 11 was able to use the different drawing techniques along with different types of drawing. Last week we looked at contour drawing, and if you notice, that is what he started out with, right? So he look at his subject and he draw the contours, and then he applies a different shading or drawing techniques. All right. Now on this other presentation, you have another artist who is using a traditional type of medium, in such a sense. He's using, we tend to use a pencil to do every single drawing that there is, or we attempt with a pencil because we think it is safe and we can erase and so on. Now this artist is using a different types of medium to create this hyper realistic drawing, and I wanted to look at the different shading technique the artists use and how we go about creating this hyper realistic drawing using the shading technique.
You've probably doodled with one of these in class, a blue Bic pen. But when Oscar Ukonu uses it, he creates these, monochromatic and hyper-realistic masterpieces that can sell for up to $600 per print to his clientele in Nigeria and around the world. To create something like this, Oscar will take up to 6 weeks and go through 10 pens. It's not that they all run out of ink, but because if he used only one pen the whole time, the nib would start bleeding from the constant friction. That's how much intensity creating these portraits requires. Intensity and a lot of skill. So how exactly does he make intricately detailed faces out of one of the most common office supplies? It comes down to 3 techniques: hatching, cross-hatching, and scribbling. Hatching is a common artist technique used in drawing to create tones and shading using closely spaced parallel lines. You can see that here. The single lines he's making are hatches, which create the base layer for creating shading and tones. They're typically used for lighter sections, but there can be variation even within hatching based on how many lines he draws, their closeness, and how much pressure he applies. The direction of the hatching can make different sections read as contrasting. For example, in this section, Oscar kept the lines relatively far apart to create an especially light part of the image. Compare that to here. There's about double the amount of lines in the same amount of space. The section is still lighter than the more shaded parts of the image, but it's darker than where Oscar hatched more spaced out lines. Hatching in curved lines creates contours on a face. Cross-hatching is used for shadowy areas. You can see it a lot in comic books, but it's much more detailed here, and there's a lot more of it in order to make it hyper-real. The overlapping crisscrosses create the illusion of depth. You can see it being used in this section, just under the lips, to create a shadow. Layering them makes the shadows even deeper and darker. With these 2 techniques, the final piece can show a full picture of the scene Oscar is trying to set. As a viewer, you'll be able to understand the lighting of the picture, which sets the mood of the whole piece. But to really bring the portrait to the finish line, Oscar will use his final technique, scribbling. But when he's talking about scribbling, it's not necessarily the doodling and randomly drawn lines you might think of. Oscar's version of scribbling is an improvisation based on skill that years of being an artist has taught him. It's his technique for adding finishing touches. But before any of this work happens, each of Oscar's pieces starts with him taking about 100.
Nika, you were saying something, Anika? Anika? All right, can you post the questions in the chat and then I'll respond to them immediately after the video. So I just want for us to watch the video and then we're able to discuss it based on the shading techniques. And then we look at the different styles of shading or drawing technique that the artist uses to create this type of artwork, right? So realistic, hyper-realistic portraits. All right, so let us finish up the video and then we can, I will address any question. But in the meantime, I'm just asking you to put the questions in the chat once we are playing a video or a demonstration. Thanks.
100 photos of his subject, which get narrowed down to the 20 or so he'll use as a reference when he puts pen to paper. The piece he's working on today is called Disinformation of a Republic. He'll start with a pencil sketch of the image so that the proportions are scaled to the size of the canvas he's working with. This will give him a foundation and help him understand the basic shapes he needs to create. Then he'll work from the top down, starting with the newspaper that's on top of the woman's head. Within it, there's tiny writing and other small images, like the photos that are typically attached to the story in the paper. Because these are so small, it will take even more precision and thoughtfulness. This section will be a mix of all 3 of his techniques, since it wraps around the head and will have varying lights and shadows. You might be wondering what happens when he makes a mistake. Well, Oscar says that he's learned to embrace those small mishaps into his pieces. However, he does take some small precautions. Although the pens he uses don't tend to smudge too much, he'll usually lean his hand on a piece of paper as he draws to minimize any smudging that may happen. Once that section is done, it's time for the section underneath, which includes most of the face, part of the ears, underneath the eyes, the nose, mouth, and chin. Here, Oscar has decided that the light source is hitting the person from the right side of the face. which means generally the thickest layers of hatching and cross-hatching will happen on the left side of the face. From there, he'll continue drawing from the neck down, following the same idea where light would naturally hit, and repeating those two techniques for the most part. Scribbling comes in mostly when Oscar is able to look at the entire image and go back in to improvise and elevate the details, like deepening the shadow on this pearl earring, or adding a piece of stray hair that might realistically be there. After 6 weeks of all this hatching, cross-hatching, and scribbling, Oscar's piece will come together to form a portrait.
Okay, I see what you're saying, Nico. All right. As I said, this is a video with an artist using the different drawing techniques, rendering our shading technique with what with which person would refer to them as. So they mention a few. I don't know if you heard them. Can you just let me know what are the shading techniques you heard that the artist is using? You can send it in the chat if you're unable to speak, or you can just go ahead. No one heard about the different shading techniques? All right, so in the video, the artist uses etching, cross etching, and scribble etching technique to create works of art, and they are very hyper realistic. So we're going to be breaking down these shading techniques today. And before I do that, I know I gave some assignment tasks to complete some of the contour drawing. So I'm just going to ask person to share some of those assignment tasks, especially for those persons who might have missed it, just to show what you have done during this process or this session of the class. And then we dive into the differentiating techniques, and we're going to break them down and create works of art. All right, some person might have previous or prior exposure to the differentiating techniques. So, and then you might learn some new ways in which you can approach differentiating techniques. All right, so I'm giving you 3 minutes just to get the homework assignment, and we can look at that.
Miss, could you repeat, please?
All right, I'm going to put it in the chat. So we're looking at the homework task, right? All right, so I just placed it in the chat. We're going to be presenting what we did last week. So the homework presentation. So I'm just going to ask you each, just one at a time. You can raise your hand if you're ready. I gave you 2 minutes just to get it prepared. In that meantime, let me just allow you to get the drawing resources close to you as well if you already haven't done so. So get all your drawing resources close by. I don't want this page to fall out. All right, so who is ready now? Carrie? Giselle? All right, can I know if persons are able to share? I don't want to be here waiting and then time run out on us to complete today's activity. So let me know what's happening. All right, seem like persons are having difficulties or not hearing me because I've been asking for the assignment task. All right, but I know Nika said that she's having heavy rainfall outside. I don't know if Carrie is hearing me and Giselle. Can everyone hear me? I need to know what's happening so I can move forward. Can you give me some feedback? All right, I'm asking for the contour drawings that we did just to recap and to present what you did. Yes, Gary, do you have your contour drawing that we did last week? All right, can you share with us, just to recap and to share with others what you have done? Go ahead. Are you able to share?
Okay, miss.
All right, wonderful. All right, great. Can you tell us a
Miss, this
subject
is
that
my
you use?
deadline.
Which one is that?
It is supposed to be the blind contour drawing.
All right, and what is the subject that you use for the blind contour drawing?
Miss, a pillow.
All right, good. And how
Miss,
you
I'm not sure if you are seeing it clearly, so I'm gonna send them in the WhatsApp group as well.
all right, that would be great. So go ahead and do that for me. Thanks. Thanks for sharing, Carrie. Giselle and Nico, you can also send it to the WhatsApp group. Nico, are you hearing me? Aniko? Giselle?
Yes, miss.
All right, are you able to share with us what you have done? All right, so let me know so I know what to do.
Yes, miss.
All right, so go ahead, we're waiting.
For the instructions.
All right, so everyone, please look at what Giselle is showing us. All right, let me just spin it to the screen, Giselle. All right, it's a bit blurred because you're moving a lot, so it's hard to see. All right, can you talk to us about what we're looking at? It's very dark. We're hardly seeing it. I think you should. I don't know if your overhead light is on, but it's hard to see what is there. And try to have your hands. Oh, it's the blind contour. All right. I'm going to
Yes,
ask you to send it to the WhatsApp group as well if you haven't done so. So at least we can get a better view at it. All right.
yes, miss.
All right. Great. So I know Anika is having a bit of connectivity issue. So I'm going to ask. I hope she's hearing me. I'm going to put it in the chat. That she send her homework task. You know what we did last class in the WhatsApp group, so everyone can actually see it. Aniko. All right. So I am going to continue. All right. So I'm going to ask you now to pay attention to this particular video. It's about still life drawing and what it means to draw from observation. Pay attention for me.
Hello everyone. For our first lesson this week, we will learn how to create a still life drawing by using value to make it look realistic. A still life is when you create a drawing or painting of an inanimate object such as something you might find lying around your kitchen. While drawing your object, it is important to note that the object should remain still. Draw a few fruits from your kitchen and use value to make it look real. Value is how light or how dark something is. Now, in order to get a lot better at still life drawing, you need to conduct a lot more studies. Draw as many different inanimate objects around your home, such as sneakers, books, anything you find lying around. Excuse me.
Dad, what do you see?
This lesson this week, we will learn how to create a still life drawing by using value to make it look realistic. A still life is when you create a drawing or painting of an inanimate object.
The place where they die.
All right. So, Giselle, you have a question? Giselle?
No, miss. No, miss.
Okay, no problem. All right. So, we just watched a video that talks about still life drawing. And based on what the presenter is saying, that you need to know what is value. And he also mentioned what value is, right, in terms of light and darkness. And when you're able to break down what value is, right, refers to the lightness and darkness of a tone or color, with the lightest value, black, is darkest. The value halfway between these extremes is called mid-gray, sometimes called tone. So you have different light value, you have different mid-tones, and you have different dark tones. And when you are creating a work of art, these are some of the terms, or these are what we look for when we are adding tones or values to our subjects or objects, right? Now, here you can see he started to look at the contours of the subject that he's drawing. So he's drawing objects that doesn't move on their own, and he's doing using the technique of observation, right? So observation is a skill that we develop. So you have to look at your subject and draw the contours. And we already looked at contours last week, the outline or the outer edges of your subject. And how you break it down and to make it look realistic is when you start to add your different values and your different tones, ranging from light, mid-tone to dark, right? So he started to add the different tones here, and he's using the technique of hatching. So he started off with hatching, and he gradually modified the drawing by going in and putting the details based on what he observed. So that's what he's doing, and he's adding the different tones. Look here, he's now adding the shadow, which is now cast on the surface. So the cast shadow is on the surface of this drawing that he's doing here. All right, so we are going to break it down, and we're going to start off with one specific type of shading technique. All right, so we're at the art making activity. I see a hand up. Okay, all right, Nika, I understand. I'm not getting Giselle at the moment. I think she got kicked off, but nonetheless, we're at the art making activity, and so we don't have the full car today because I know the rain was falling last night, and I know it might be affecting persons. All right, so we're at the art making activity. Now, the art materials that you're going to need for this activity, your crayons, your drawing books, or drawing paper, marker, pen, whether it's gelling pen or otherwise, and your drawing pencils, Or if you don't get the chance to buy, if you haven't gotten the chance to buy your drawing pencil, the regular pencil can use for now. All right, is everyone still seeing the presentation? All right, so we need the following art materials, right? So I did ask persons who were on to gather these materials. Can you text me or let me know if you have already gathered the materials so we can go forward, or you need that 2 minutes? So we need art materials. I'm texting it in the chat. Okay, so I'm giving everyone additional 2 minutes, then we can start our making activity. All right, I am excited to start this process. So now you can see how you can add tones and values to your shapes and your subjects to make them look real. All right, Carrie, are you still with me? Did you collect the resources, or you need that time to go and get them? All right, so we are going to continue. All right, so we're going to first look at this demonstration video that really speaks about the different shading technique, stippling. All right, so stippling is one of the drawing or shading technique that artists use to make subjects looks realistic. All right, so watch how the artists use the different light, mid-tone, and dark tone or value to create illusion of depth. Right, there's a light source, and light source is very important. It plays a big part in how we understand form and how we understand value. All right.
Value, the quality of light and dark of a certain shade or tone. Stipple, to draw, engrave, or paint in dots or short strokes. It is important to note that as we stipple, the closer we put our dots together, the darker it will appear to be. The further apart we space our dots, the lighter it will appear to be. So if we're looking for an area to get really dark on our value scale, we want to make sure that we place all our dots very close together. As we begin to shade the sphere, it's important to notate where our light source is. Knowing where our light source is will tell us where the light lies on our sphere and where the shadows will fall. Also, as we begin to stipple the sphere to show the values of light to dark, it's important that we know that we stipple in the direction the object is moving. So we want to emphasize the fact that the sphere is going rounded. So we will begin to stipple in the direction the object is moving, making sure to stipple close together for the dark areas and to stipple further apart for the light areas.
Sorry about that, miss. I got kicked out of the class.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
All right, so that is a demonstration on how you go about creating the stippling drawing technique. All right, now if you notice that the artist is using up or the presenter is using up the different tones and the different values from light, mid tone to light tone, and with the reference of a light source, right? So I pose a question in the chat. I'm just going to say it. Now, what do you understand from stippling and how is it created? What is stippling technique? How is it created? If you're unable to speak, you can answer the question there. And if you're able to, just raise your hand and you can go ahead and open your mic and talk. All right, how is stippling technique created? Anika, is it any better on your side?
What did you say, miss?
All right, I was asking if it's any better on your side now because I posted a question in the chat and I was asking what is stippling technique and how was it created? That's what we're looking at. So we're going to use a shading technique stippling to create different range or apply range of tones to a subject. All right. So I am seeing one of the answers in the chat. All right, Carrie says stippling technique looks like a large group of dots. Very good observation, Carrie. So yes, so stippling is using dots to create different values. So you basically putting down dots, whether using your pencil, marker, pen, or even your crayon. Okay, is that clear? All right, so I was responding to Carrie in the WhatsApp chat. All right, so we're going to try and understand light in the sense of how we use the different lights sources to shade the different geometric forms. Now, every subject or every object that you see around you, you can break it down into simple shapes and these geometric forms, right? So once you apply this to a drawing surface, which is two-dimensional, you create the illusion of depth. And once you now apply the different range of tones using any of the drawing technique or shading technique, you now start to make the work look realistic. And as I said, this is done based on observation, right? So we have to know what is a light source and how it affects or affect a part of how we represent subjects on a surface or any given surface. All right, so this presentation, you will be seeing how this presenter draw the different basic geometric shapes, which is the form, right? Such as the cylinder, the cone, and the cube, and the spheres. And you're going to be practicing these immediately after. So I just wanted to show you how you go about toning the different geometric forms. So let us watch this video.
So this video is going to take you through the basic process of completing this worksheet. What I'm going to be looking for is that you have a nice value scale going on over here using dots, known as the stippling method, and you're going to recreate these shapes here using the stippling method as well. So to start, and this is just
All right, so this is a value scale using the stippling method. And as Giselle and Carrie said, for darker areas, you apply a greater number of dots and keep them closer together. Yes. And when you want to show lighter areas, you have less dots. So I am going to give you about 6 minutes just to draw this value scale, and you want to show a range of dots from dark, medium to light tone, right, using the stippling method. So you're going to, on your drawing book or drawing paper, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rectangles. So this is a value scale with the stippling technique. And then we're going to draw the different geometric forms, right? The spheres, the cone, the cube, along with the cylinder, and then we're going to apply the stippling technique to these geometric forms. All right, so I'm going to text it in the chat, the instructions, because as I said, I know persons are having those technical difficulties. For those persons who have already heard what I said, please begin. I'm giving you 6 minutes just to draw up the value scale on stippling, and you're going to show us a range of tones from light to dark. And when you practice these this shading technique, once we start to apply to the different subjects, when we create our own still life, you will be seeing how effective practicing this technique will be to your drawing to make it look realistic. All right, so please do that, and then after that 6 minutes, we're going to move on to the geometric forms. All right, so Carrie asked if we should do it pen or pencil. You can do whichever medium you have. So if you have the pencil, you can use your pen, you can use a marker, even a crayon can be used. All right.
just for kind of like a warm up. First of all, my suggestion to you would be using a marker or a pen. You can use a ballpoint pen, and if you do use a marker, I don't care what color it is, but you just want to make sure, whoops, sorry, you just want to make sure that they're not too thin or too thick. Now, if you go with something that's crazy thin, like one of these, I don't know if we're going to get into focus, but if you go for something like this, it might be seemingly too small for you to work. So ideally, if you have an abundance of different markers available, my suggestion would be something like this Sharpie pen here, or you can even go into like one of these Sharpie extra fine point marker as well. Something like that is fine. If you end up going with a Sharpie, like a full-blown Sharpie marker, you just want to make sure that the Sharpie is a thin enough tip, like a tiny tip, nothing that's been like reused and has gotten worn down. You basically want to try to replicate the dots that you see in the handout. So if the dots you find that they're much smaller, you may want to try to find something thicker, but you definitely don't want to find anything that's thicker than this. So even something like if you have a marker, like a Crayola marker, something like that would be completely fine as well. And of course, it doesn't really matter what color it is, as long as when you send it to me, it's clear enough. Something like yellow probably won't be able to see. So I'm gonna be using this guy. So when you start this, you probably don't want to start with the crazy light, because if you have put too many dots down and it's too dark, then everything else is going to be affected. If you start with something like the dark or the medium dark, even if you add too many dots, it's still going to probably be okay unless you completely fill it. So you can always add more, you can't take away. So when you start this, you want to go with dots that are pretty consistent, especially if you're starting to practice. You want these dots to be kind of even. You don't want some to look like dashes or splotches or anything like that. You want to kind of just practice even the idea of making dots. And as you go along, if you push a little lighter with your tool, you may find that your dots will be slightly smaller, as opposed to pushing a little bit harder. Here's a little public service announcement. If you guys are using something like a Sharpie marker, something permanent, and you're a little concerned, just take a little time, know what surface you're working on right now. If you're working on a hardwood table or something like that, you don't want to run the risk of getting any of the marker on a table, a surface like that. What I do is I'm working on my table, but I literally have a piece of blackboard underneath it, just in case something bleeds through. Plus I have a shinier surface, like I put a piece of plastic on my dining room table, so that reflection looks kind of weird in video, so I like to have that going on. So you're just going to kind of keep going and filling it up, and like I said, with the dark, you really want it to be clustered together. What I'm going to be looking at is this evenly distributed here, like have this nice and even so it looks like a really, really nice dark gray. Even, you don't want areas that are too dark or areas that are too light. It should look pretty consistent. This is going to take you a long time. Expect this one to take you a long time. Then when you go to the medium dark one, you're just going to kind of do the same process, but just double check your work on the right here. Just make sure that it's not going darker than this area here, and you can use this as a reference as well. So they're pretty close together, pretty clustered up, but not as much as this. Can you bop back and forth? Of course you can. Like if you start making this too dark and then you look here and you're like, wow, these are almost the same, I could probably make this a little darker. Go for it. And when you go to these over here, know that they're going to be a little more difficult to do because, again, you don't want to put too much on there. Once you have it, you can't take them away once you have the dots there. So if you start applying the dots, you need to be extremely careful not to have too many, but also know that it's going to take you less time. So you want these to be evenly distributed. You don't want these to be, you want to social distance these. They should be all, these little spaces 6 feet apart, just like that. Okay, so you could see that that's pretty evenly spaced, and that
All right, is everyone seeing the value scale here and how it is being done?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you should start your value scale. You can use your marker, you can use your pencil, you can use your crayons. But for you to get a feel of the dark, medium tone, medium light, or mid tones in a sense, and light tones. So that is what helps you now to create the illusion of depth in a work of art. All right, great. All right. So raise of hands already started, so I know what is happening. You started your value scale. Anyone started the value scale? Let me text it in the chat. As I said, I know persons are having those difficulties. All right, so I am going to post some value scale in the WhatsApp group along with on the Google Classroom. For those persons already accept the invite, you'll be able to see these different aids along with the demonstration videos. So you can create your different stippling technique based on the instruction given, say value scale, and then we're going to be creating the different stippling technique on the different geometric forms. All right. Then we're going to have an exercise where you put the stippling technique on the different materials. So you're going to create a composition or to stipple or to use that drawing technique to render your subject, which can be a cultural or traditional subject or a material culture within your everyday environment. All right, how is it going, everyone? Carrie, Giselle, Joanna, have we started?
It's like doing the rectangle on the screen. Yes, miss.
Okay, it's called a value scale. You have started that, right?
Yes, miss. I've started the value scale.
Okay, great. All right, great. So once you have created the value scale, you're going to have the stippling technique to the value scale. I've also posted some samples in the WhatsApp group, so you can look at those samples that were created and to use it to guide you as well. So I know you might not get the chance to finish all the value scale, but it's for me to see that you have an understanding from moving from the light tones or the light values to mid tones, medium tones to dark tones. So closer lines, closer dots create a darker value, and when you disperse the dots, you put them further apart, it gives you a lighter value. So that is the essence of stippling. And in between, you have the mid-tones. All right. All right. So I just admitted someone else. I don't know if you're able to hear what we're doing or what I said before, but we're doing the stippling technique. We're looking at shading technique, and we're starting off with the stippling. So I gave everyone the instruction of creating a value scale using the stippling technique. All right. So I'm seeing the name Lyson Tucker. I'm not sure who is that specifically. Is that the right name? All right, so we're going to wrap up this part in 2 minutes time, and then we're going to draw the geometric form. We're going to start out with the spheres, and then after the spheres, I am going to ask you to complete the others for assignment. So we're going to do one geometric shape, geometric form. So you draw in the circle, then when you apply the different value to it, it's going to give the illusion of depth. All right, and we're going to start off with the spheres. Anika, are you hearing a little better now? I don't know if the connection have been a little better on your end.
Yes, miss, I'm hearing you.
All right, great. Have you started the value scale for the stippling technique?
Miss, I
All
cannot
right, so
see what
once
you are presenting.
I also put it in the WhatsApp group. So you can check the WhatsApp group because as I said, I know persons are having the different challenges based on connectivity and the devices. But nonetheless, I posted it in the WhatsApp group so you can look at the sample that they're using. It looks like a rectangle, and it has been sectioned based on dark, medium, and light tone. Are you able to see that in the WhatsApp group? An image was posted there. So it's immediately after art materials, drawing book, paper, pencil, pen, marker, crayons. Then you see the sample value scale, and then you see the other one. So that's what we're doing now. All right. So we should be, engaged with that value scale by now. Carrie, how far are you with that? Giselle?
Yes, miss.
All right. Can you, what medium are you using? Is it a pencil, a pen, marker? What are we using? All right. So you have one more to draw. All right. No problem. What are you using, Giselle? What medium are we using to create the stippling technique? Let me know if you're using a pencil, crayon, marker.
Pencil.
Oh, you're using a pencil. All right. And how are you finding it so far?
Good.
Okay, so Carrie's using a pen. All right, great. All right, so Joanna is using a marker. Very good. So I like that everyone is using a different type of medium based on what is available to you. That is very good. All right, so while you're working, I'm going to create a value scale using the Google Jamboard and exercise a stippling technique. All right, so I'm using a digital platform to do the value scale and to create those stippling techniques. So you can also draw digitally. So everyone who has a Gmail account is able to create digital drawing and achieve the same results. So I'm selecting the marker as my pen tool here on this digital platform, and then I'm going to use it to create the stippling effect.
Ma'am,
Yes. Anyone ready to share with us? We're going to move on to drawing a subject based on the geometric form. I heard Mace, but I'm not sure who is asking a question. Carrie, was it you who said Mace or Giselle? Okay. All right. Now, these are some of the subjects that you can now incorporate the shading technique. Stippling, right? So the stippling drawing technique, as you realize, it takes a lot of patience. Using tiny dots, dots that are further apart, that gives you light tone, dark tone, and mid tone. Now, these are done using marker and digital devices. I was trying to use the Jamboard a moment ago just to show you that you can use a different platform to create that. You can also create it on Canvas. That's another drawing app. I'm going to show you immediately after this. I just wanted to show you some of the ways in which you can achieve a variety of tones in using the stippling technique. All right, so these are two compositions, still life composition, and it is all using just dots to create a different tonal value or tones to achieve that depth in an artwork. Here's another example of where artists use a stippling technique, right? And this is using the marker and also washes of paint. So the paint, as I mentioned in the first class, you can use wash of paint or use your Q-tip or any object that can make those tiny dots, right? The same as we call cotton swab. If you take off the end of the one of the swab, you get that round edge or round tip, and you can now dip it in ink or paint and create those stippling effect. All right. Now I'm going to do a demonstration with the geometric form. So I'm going to show you how you go about doing that. Now these geometric form, you can achieve a range of tones based on the different subjects. So for example, I have this lemon right here. If I should draw this lemon, I can now apply the different stippling technique to it. Or if I want to draw this coconut, which we know it's a part of our culture. We use it for rice and peas. We use it for so many things, right? And you want to apply to make your subject look realistic. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to use a marker to draw this lemon here. And I'm using the contours to just observe what is happening here. So I'm using the contours, using a yellow marker. So it is a light. I'm making the contours of the line. I'm using modify contour for this drawing here. All right, a little bit of continuous line. It's the top of the lemon. All right. Now I want to see the highlights. Now my shadow is on this side. I think you can see it based on the light. So light is coming this way and the shadow is on this side. All right, so the same thing applies here. My light is coming this way. The shadow is going to form on this side. Now, how do you go about identifying your shadow? Now, your light source. So if I have a light source right here, the lines, I'm just using this for demonstration, is going to come at the edge. So this now is going to allow me to see where my shadow will be cast. That cast shadow, where it would end up, right? On this side, I'm just simple putting where my shadow will be. based on, right? So my shadow will fall within this area. And I'm going ahead now and I'm going to start to create my shadow, and it will shape like my subject. Right? And if I use my dots, I am now going to start with the cast shadow, which is the darkest part. Right? So if I start to build on my tones with my dots, I can now apply a clusters of dot by putting them very close together to create that dark tone. Right now, the shadow itself also gets lighter as it moves towards the light. Now, when you're drawing, use very light lines, especially when your lines are going towards the light or your subject is exposed to the light. Is very light. So I use these markers because I wanted you to see the different tones or different values. But I could start off with the yellow and then I go over with my red to give the dark tones. But I just wanted you to see what I'm talking about in terms of different tones. All right, so I'm just going to bring it up so you can see. So now it seems that my lemon is now on the surface, which the cast shadow is now on the surface based on what I have drawn here. Now I have another one. This is a pepper that I did, and I use the same marker, pencil crayon, along with gel ink pen to create this tone, different values in the different tones here. All right. So I am going to now. All right, it seems like it's going to rain on my end as well. I'm going to show you different geometric forms and how light and shadow cast on a subject. We just looked at it based on the lemon, but if I should have this stone right here, let me get a white surface. The white surface allows you to see your shadow. So if you're setting up your subject, you can always put it on a white surface and it allows you to see the different tones and the different cast shadow. Right, so the light is coming from here once again. Let me just bring it down. And that's the rain that you're hearing. And then you have the shadow on the opposite side. So if the light is coming here, the shadow is going to pass over here. The light is on this side, it's going to pass on the opposite side. Right? So this is a stone. And you would do the same in terms of having it look three-dimensional or give the illusion on a drawing surface by looking at how light travels and how light affects the form or the subject. Right, so here I'm showing a sample chart, a chart that breaks it down for you. So just pay attention to this. So we have our light source, right? We also have light, and then we have our highlight. Now the highlight is the lightest part on the subject. That is where the light really, it's the center of the light. Then you have the reflective light, and we have the shadow and the cast shadow. I don't know if the rain is affecting what you're hearing, right? Similarly, right, these are the different tones. These are the this is how we break down light and shadow and reflective light to really shade a subject to make it look three-dimensional. So with the blending technique and identifying light and shadow, you're able to make your work look three-dimensional. All right, so after you finish your value scale, you're going to draw the geometric form, and you're going to apply the stippling technique. So we're starting off with the spheres, as I have a similar lemon that I started off with, and if you break it down, it's really a spheres that we're drawing, a circular subject or a circular object. So you're going to do all 4 of them for the activity, but you're going to start out with the spheres and complete the others for assignment to get all the practice that you need. All right. So those are the geometric form. The activity is to produce 2 artwork based on stippling drawing technique. So you're going to draw 2 geometric form and apply the stippling drawing shading technique. And then for your assignment task, draw an ordinary or everyday object using the modify contour drawing and then apply the stippling shading technique. So you should see a range of light and shadow. So this is the instruction for today. So I know based on the time we might not get the chance to do 2 geometric form, but I wanted to start off with at least one of them. And then you're going to start to draw a subject. So you can, if you notice, I can select between the lemon or maybe a cologne bottle or the coconut as I showed you, or anything in your everyday environment, your ordinary environment. You just select a subject and you apply the stippling technique to it with the idea of creating light, showing cast shadow, range of values or tones. Right, so I'm going to go back to the video that we were watching that basically break down different stippling technique and how you go about using the geometric forms to create that illusion of depth once you apply the stippling technique. All right, so that's the instructions. All right, so we're going to continue to see how she go about drawing the geometric forms and applying the shading stippling technique to them.
That the top here would have. So then you have this one over here. So again, this is very similar to over here where it's dark, then it goes to light, and then there's a little hint of dark on the side here. This is probably, I want to say it's pretty challenging where the outside here will kind of go darker and it'll go light to a hot spot, they call it right here. This is a hot spot, this is a hot spot, and I would consider this parallelogram right there being the hot spot where that's the lightest spot. And then as it fades out, it goes darker, but it's not going to be linear. It's going to be like a gradient that's more radial, where it's going to be kind of rounded edges. So I'm going to start with the cylinder. So when I start with the cylinder, again, similar to how you did the value scales, do what's the darkest first. So you want to hit this area pretty dark, and you want it to be consistently dark in a parallel or in a vertical line. So you want this vertical line here to have the same darkness. So here it's going to be pretty dark. And then as you come around towards the center, it's going to get lighter. So right here, you want this coming down vertically to be dark as well. In the illustration that I showed, it goes pretty quickly where it's dark and then it's light. It's a pretty quick transition. I would probably encourage you to do those transitions a little, not as abrupt, a little less abrupt, like quick. So this is going to be matching your dark or your medium dark value coming down. And then as you get towards the center, you're going to use less and less dots. So this is going to be very similar to what you're going to do with the cone, but the cone is going to go more like a point. Instead of the lines being vertical, the lines are going to be kind of, it'll be vertical in the middle, but then it'll be kind of slanting out. So I'm getting a little bold here by coming out over here. This should be crazy light. This should be very spaced out over here. Some kids want to do the whole thing in this very, very light, just to kind of mark it all out, and then, you know, come over here and add more dots over here if you wanted to. So you can work in reverse if you'd like to. I usually start in the darkest part because I just want to get a lot of dots put in there at once. So when you're over here, you don't really have to think about it. When you start working towards the middle, you have to be a little bit more selective with your location of these dots. So my husband was watching me working before on the value scales, and he says, "Oh, if you were my teacher, you were my art teacher, I'd be hating your guts right now." Like, it was just, for him watching me do that, he was just like, "Oh, it's so tedious." And I said, "Yeah, but it's worth it." He's like, "Not for me." Yeah, he is very much not an art person. So he appreciates what I do, he respects what I do, he just says it's not for him. So, sorry if I tortured you. Mr. Corso sympathizes with you. So, you just keep going until you have this looking pretty good. Now, if I did this as a picture, I would do the shape in a pencil, like literally laying out the cylinder shape in pencil, and then I would go back and erase the pencil when I'm all done putting the dots in. You know, similar to what we did with like the micrography, where you laid out all your spaces and then you drew your shadows and lights and dark spaces in, and then at the very end you took it and you erased it. So that looks pretty good. I would probably go a little bit darker in here, but for the most part that looks good. Now for this shadow, put it a little dark around on the bottom. You know, grab a little bit off the edge, and then come up just a little bit from the end of that curve, right before it goes vertical, a little bit higher, and then just make it rounded. For this cone, even though it looks like it's sitting, like here, you could see the bottom of it, here you can't see the bottom of it. But do the same thing, starting from the edge here, come up and around, and if you want to make it more like a point, you can make it more like a point. Over here, it would be sort of the same thing, but instead you're going to go with a line essentially following this line right here. And then the circle is going to look a lot like the shadow for the cylinder. Just a very long ellipse right along there. So something like that would be good. And I would be okay with you guys hitting that with pencil and then going back and going really, really dark. It does not have to be as big as it's drawn in the illustration, but this would be the darkest thing. Darker even than the darkest part of your shadowed part of the cylinder or part of your shape. This is going to be the darkest, okay? So I am going to, again, work in fast motion so you guys can watch how things go on as I finish up this handout. So before we go into making the circle, I just wanted to Like I was going to do the fast motion thing, but I just wanted to go through a couple of things with you that I might have mentioned before. So pretty much everything that we've been doing, everything's been pretty much like straight up and down as far as the value transitions. This one's going to be different because everything's going to be kind of on a curve. So when you start applying your dots, you may want to kind of see if you could follow along in like an arch that's going to be similar to the direction of the edge of the circle. So you can see that I'm just placing them in like an arc. And that's how, when you apply your dots, you're going to be working in this kind of arch. And then the hot spot, they call it. The hot spot's usually like, you know, on the top right-hand side, you know, maybe a little bit more towards the right, but that hot spot is going to be the lightest part, and it's never along the edge like that. It's always kind of a little more in the center, so you can see the whole edge of that circle, including the edge here, and it's not connected to the edge here, so you have a little bit of a dark shadow. So if I come over here, you can see there's a little bit of a shadow over here, darker spot. The hot spot's more in the center. Okay, so I'm going to work with this live without the fast motion so you can see it should go pretty quickly. So again, I'm going to go, as I keep going, creeping towards that hot spot. And if you wanted to draw that in real lightly and erase it later, you can absolutely do that. Almost not going to be anything in that space, maybe just a couple of dots. And then it's going to go darker and darker, following along. Right now, I kind of spread them all out evenly. So I'm going around the edge here. I'm also going to hit it down here. I'm not going to contend with the shadow because the shadow, as you know, is just all very, very, very dark. Lots of dots on there, just filling it up flat. But this is where it will follow around here and get a little bit darker. So your eye should kind of pop up to that illustration above, and you should be kind of like glancing over there and referring to it as you're doing this one, and that'll help you stay on the right track. But you could see how I'm kind of rounding it off here, all coming out from this center circle, that hot spot, if you would. It's called a hot spot. That's what they call it. Look it up. The hot spot is the lightest part of your subject. It's the one that gets almost like a glare, or lightest part of your picture. I keep doing these. I'm talking about a light source, and I'm looking out the window, and the sun's coming out. I wonder if I have the power to make the sun come out. I'm just going to keep making shadowy drawings. So you can see it's starting to develop. I'm going to make this a little bit darker in here, which would possibly cause me to make this spot darker even yet. So just got to be a little cautious there. So this should be the lightest, this should be dark, a little bit darker, and the darkest spot should be around the edge over here. So you can see it's starting to develop, and always keep that in mind. So the idea is it's going to create the illusion of depth and shadowing just from dots. Like I said, my husband walked by before again. He just shakes his head. What are you making these kids do? They're learning value. They're learning shadowing. Like you're making them draw a bunch of dots. I said, well, yeah, but we're learning. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. The only thing I'm going to need to do is this right here, and I'll do that at a later time. You get the idea. So before we go into making the circle, I just wanted to, like I was going to do the fast motion thing, but I just wanted to go through a couple of things with you that I might have mentioned before. So pretty much everything that we've been doing, everything's been pretty much like straight up and down as far as the value transitions. This one's going to be different because everything's going to be kind of on a curve. So when you start applying your dots, you may want to kind of see if you could follow along in like an arch that's going to be similar to the direction of the edge of the circle. So you can see that I'm just placing.
All right, so she was demonstrating the spheres. And as I said, the different subjects around you can also be utilized. So what I did was to use my light source and use construction lines just to outline what I'm doing here. So this is my light source, and I try to use a pencil now to say, okay, how the light will travel. So now I know how my shadow will be cast on the surface. Now, when you're shading the spheres, because it's a circular subject that I'm looking at, which is a stone, right? You go in the direction in which the subject appears. So we're looking at the contours. Remember, we looked at contours, and this little circle that I have here, this would be the highlight. Oh, Carrie, I am going to be sharing the video at the end, so I'm going to upload it, so person can see all the different demonstrations, so you can watch it afterwards. So this is why I'm recording, so persons can get the benefit of what I'm really demonstrating here. So I was saying that I use a light source, could be a lamp, it could be coming from the sun, or maybe maybe a flashlight, but I use those lines to guide me along the edge of the subject, to see where my shadow will fall. So that's what I did, right? And as I said, I'm using the contour, so I'm going in a circular motion, in terms of how the subject is in creating my dot. That helps to form the illusion of what we have here. So Carrie, I'm going to take some pictures and send it in the WhatsApp group of what I am doing, okay? All right. And I'm also going to upload it to my channel. So I have a channel where you can look at all the classes once I have recorded them, because as I said, I am catering to everyone who has the different devices and finding ways to solve the problem so no one is left behind. All right, so I am going to post some of those images based on the demonstration that I have. I did say I'm going to demonstrate how I go about using the digital platform to create a work of art. All right. So this, what I'm using now is called Canvas. I'm going to copy the link and post it in the chat. So look out for that. I'm also going to put it in the WhatsApp group. So this is Canvas. All right. It is a digital drawing app. And I am encouraging you to try and utilize these apps to, create different shading techniques. I sent it in the WhatsApp group as well. You should be seeing it, right? So here I'm going to now try and recreate that stone that I have here. So I'm just going to demonstrate how you would go about creating your line, your light and shadow, or cast shadow in a sense. Now, once you're shading, you should have a light source. So I am just going to put this dot here for my light source. Let me change the color just to for you to see the different light. All right, great. Now, with this, there is what we call eye level. Now, your eye level is where the sky or the land appears to meet, and based on how you're standing. So if you're sitting, your eye level will be different, right? So your eye level varies based on your height and where you're standing or sitting on, and so on. Now we have what we call an horizon line, right? That is represented on a horizontal plane. So first I'm going to draw this vertical line here, and then I'm going to have my horizon line let me just have my horizon line. All right, so my light will be coming from here. So this is like the sun. As I say, it could be a bulb or whatever it is, right? I'm going to now, let me use a different color tool. I think I should use about the yellow. Darker tone of yellow. Or this look more like orange or burnt orange. And I'm going to show you the line based on the light. This is where the light would hit this subject at the end here. So now this allows us to know where our cast shadow would be. Right, so I'm just using these lines to guide you. So light would hit right here. So this is where our core, our highlight would be. Similarly, we pass alongside the subject here, right? So it's almost like ray. Similarly, here as well. I'm just showing you how you can now say where your light would hit on the subject and how you would go about creating your cast shadow. All right. You can use a pencil for this, and this now helps you in creating that area. All right. Now, let me go ahead. So right at the edge of your subject, this line here, and remember your shadow mimics, your cast shadow mimics your subject and the shape of it. All right. So I'm now going to put in my cast shadow using the lines to guide me, right? And that is where I would have my shadow. Now I can now go back and erase, because you would be using a pencil for this. I can now go and erase my lines that I'm using to guide me. Yes, I'm just erasing the inside. Can always go back and fill in the different areas. So that is how my shadow will now appear on my subject that I'm drawing. All right. Let me click back on the pen tool and bring up back the shadow. All right, now I'm going to apply my stippling, right, to what I have here. And I'm going to use a marker for this. All right, that size is too big. In the canvas, you can change the size of your pen tool. All right, so I've changed the size. I know I can make my stipplings, I can make my dots along my drawing plane. So I'm now applying the stippling shading technique for my shadow. You know, once you go in further apart, and the dots can also reduce because it's coming closer to the light. So you can also reduce the size of your dots as they come closer to the light, right? So they would reduce in size as well to enhance that illusion. And you can always go back and change the size once you're doing the darker areas. Great. All right, so this is a digital drawing tool. As I said, the name is Canvas, and you're able to create stippling technique based on the subject that you're drawing, right? I'm just simply filling. Now, on your subject, you're going to find out that you have core shadows, as I said, highlights, and you simply just change. I'm just going to change the size here and identify. Let me go ahead and use the yellow to outline what I'm talking about. You're going to shade based on the shape of the subject, right? So this is all. I'm just using my my contour lines, my cross contour lines as well. I can use cross contour, but for now I'm just going to show you the contour line. So within these area now, I should be creating my stippling technique. And as I mentioned before, that your light plays a big part. So you have your light, your shadow, your reflective light, which is going to be this part here. This is where the reflective light is going to be. All right, so this space right here should not have any dots. I'm just going to go ahead, change my color, select my tool, my digital drawing tool, changing the size. Let me bring it up a bit. And I'm now going to apply the dots. So within my reflective light, I should leave that space very light. And your reflective light is basically where the surface, the light on the surface bounce back to your subject to cause that light to reflect. That's why it's called a reflective light. All right. So I hope everyone is seeing this. I can now remember once it's going towards the light, you can change the size of your pen tool to make it lighter. You have less dots because it's now dispersed. And then I just go in and give my core shadow. Right, the shadow itself is formed on the subject. So this is going to be one of the darkest part. I'm going to change the size of my pen tool so I can get that shadow. And go a little bit bigger. This is where my shadow would be. All right, so I hope that was a little more clearer. So the light and shadow, you have to understand that as I showed you on this diagram here. You have highlights, you have the light area, which you'd have less dots. You have the shadow, which is it range from mid-tone to dark tones. Then you have the reflective light, and then the cast shadow, which is the darkest area. And you have the highlight, and then you have your light source, which affects how you shade or apply drawing shading technique to your subject. All right. Anika, Carrie.
Yes,
I don't know
miss.
if you're still okay. Have you started the spheres?
Yes, miss.
And how is it going?
This is going great.
All right. I know it takes a little time because to really use the different drawing tools to get those dots in to create that stippling technique, rendering the subject. It takes a lot of patience. All right. And as I said, this is the spheres. It's a circle. It's a circle, and then you add your different tones to it. So I'm just going to go back to the task. So you're creating at least, you should have done 2 geometric forms. We're going to work with one for now. As I said, the stippling technique does take time. Then you're going to apply the stippling technique to a subject. Remember, I showed you the lemon and I started off. I have also done a pepper. Started off with a pepper here. There's still the sphere, so I practice with my pencil and I use a mark and pen as I said before. You can get any subject at home. Yes, it does takes a lot of patience for the subject. And as I demonstrated here as well, this is a lemon and how you go about creating those shadow and putting in those dots. So you're going to select a subject, an everyday subject, just one, and you're going to use your modified contour drawing and you really create that tone, that value, right? That range of tone that I would love to see you do. I'm excited to see what you're going to create, right? I am just going to ask persons just to show me what you have done so far, just we can wrap up what you have learned and how you go about doing each work. You can also send in a WhatsApp group, whether you finish or not, just to share with us. Are you able to show me, Carrie?
Yes.
Anika, if you're unable to share, just put it in the group. All right, so go ahead. Let me see what you have done so far. All right, it's a bit dark. I'm unable to see the spheres. I don't know, maybe the lighting. The light, it seems very dark. Okay, I'm seeing it now. All right, so you have selected your highlight and so on, right? Great. So it's a bit blurred, but I am going to
Yes.
allow you to take a pic. Yes, very good, very good. I'm seeing those tiny dots. What medium are you using? Using the pencil or the marker?
Mr. Pencil.
Yes, I know it does take patience a lot of time, but it's rewarding once you see what you have produced. All right, very good, very good. All right, Anika, what about you? Thank you, Karen, for sharing. Nico, not sure if okay. All right, so Carrie, what have you learned today? Anything new? Just wrapping up. What have you learned? What different have anything new that you have learned today? How did you find this activity?
Miss, the activity was great, and I learned that it really depends on your lighting and how the light, where the light is. And Miss, I think the stippling technique is the one that we should really learn first. So I think you did a great job today.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Carrie, for that. All right, so do enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I am going to see you next class, but we are always on the WhatsApp group if there's anything that you need to, further clarify. All right. Bye for
Okay,
now.
Miss. So this is our homework to finish up. Okay.
Yes, we have work to finish up indeed. All right, bye.
Bye, Miss.
All right.